She called me barren before dessert. That's the part that sticks. We were sitting at the long mahogany table in her over-decorated dining room, the china gleaming, the wine glasses half full, the roast chicken perfectly carved. And Margaret, my mother-in-law, leaned in with that thin-lipped smile and said, "You know, Anna, some women just aren't meant for motherhood." My cheeks burned. My chest tightened. I forced a polite laugh, the kind that tastes like metal on your tongue. Across the table, David shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking down to his plate. He didn't say anything. He never did. I felt the familiar sting rise, the heartbreak I'd carried silently for years, the whispered diagnosis from doctors, the rounds of IVF that drained our savings, the pregnancy tests lined up on the bathroom counter like a row of tiny tombstones. Margaret reached over, patting my hand. "Of course, dear. You and David have your own kind of love." Her voice dripped with the softest form of emotional abuse, the one dressed up as kindness. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her that every word she spoke carved fresh lines into wounds she couldn't see. But I stayed seated. I smiled faintly. I tucked the pain away, because Margaret didn't know the secret I was holding. And the moment I decided to reveal, it would be the moment everything changed. That night, after the dinner, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling David's warm, familiar breath beside me. A woman like me should just accept her place, right? That's what Margaret believed. That's what her every smirk, every thinly veiled jab, every polite dig was designed to remind me. David had kissed my forehead softly before drifting to sleep, whispering, "Ignore her, Anna. It doesn't matter." But it did. It mattered every time she invited us over just to parade her other grandchildren in front of me. It mattered every time she accidentally sent me articles on adoption or child-free marriages. I felt the ache deep in my bones, the longing I had carried for years, the desire to hold a child, to see David cradle something we made together, to silence the voice in my own head that had started to believe maybe Margaret was right. Emily was the only one who knew the truth. My best friend, my sister in everything but blood, the one who'd been there through every failed round of IVF, every doctor's appointment, every night I sobbed into her lap whispering, "Why not me?" And now, against all odds, it had happened. 2 little pink lines, confirmed by blood test, confirmed again by the first sonogram. I was 8 weeks pregnant, our miracle baby, the child we thought we'd never have. I had waited so long for this moment, dreamed so long of shouting it from the rooftops. But as I lay there in the dark, I realized I didn't want to share it in a sweet announcement. I wanted to wield it. The next morning, I stood at the bathroom mirror, pressing a hand to my still flat stomach, whispering softly, "You are mine." I felt the stirrings of determination coil inside me, not just as a woman, not just as a wife, but as a mother. He lied, saying it didn't matter, but it did. David's reassurances, his gentle, let-it-go smiles, had only ever covered the truth. That Margaret's words sank deeper into me than he wanted to admit. Every little dismissal had been a gaslighting cut, making me doubt my worth, making me shrink just a little more each year. I pressed my fingertips to the counter, breathing deeply. No more shrinking, no more apologizing for what I couldn't control, and definitely no more giving Margaret the satisfaction of watching me flinch. Emily called that afternoon, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Have you told him yet?" she whispered. I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Not yet." She paused, then said carefully, "Are you waiting for the right moment, or the right stage?" I smiled faintly, feeling the pull of something sharp, something strategic. Both. David, of course, was clueless. That night, As we made dinner, he kissed my cheek, humming softly, moving through the kitchen with ease. I watched him closely, heart swelling with love, but also tightening with frustration. He had protected me from so many things, except her. As I tucked the unopened baby announcement wine bottle into the fridge, a slow, deliberate idea took shape. Margaret wanted a legacy? She wanted to see me cracked and barren? She was about to learn that a woman like me could rise. The next family dinner came faster than I expected. Margaret's Sunday tradition, where she gathered everyone like a queen holding court. This wasn't family. This was emotional abuse. We arrived with a bottle of wine tucked carefully into my purse, the one I'd chosen weeks ago for the baby announcement, now loaded with a double meaning Margaret would never see coming. Margaret greeted David with an over-the-top hug, kissing his cheek, brushing past me like I was part of the furniture. "Anna," she said coolly, "you look rested." My fists clenched at my sides, but I smiled faintly. "Thank you, Margaret. It's been a good month." At the table, she started in quickly, showing photos of her other grandkids, laughing loudly, bragging about school awards and soccer trophies. Across the table, David squeezed my knee gently under the table, a silent hang in there. But I wasn't crumbling this time. I was calculating. As we moved to the main course, Margaret launched the dagger I'd been waiting for. "You know, Anna," she said sweetly, "some women just aren't built for motherhood. It's not a betrayal. It's just nature." Chest burned. My hands tightened around the stem of my wine glass. And in that sharp, cutting moment, something inside me clicked into perfect clarity. I wasn't going to let her win. I was going to flip the script. And I was going to do it, in a way she'd never forget. I spent the rest of dinner quiet but steady, the weight of her words pressing into me like a brand. They broke me, until I learned to play. Every glance, every smug little comment Margaret threw across the table only sharpened my resolve. Poured wine carefully, watching the deep red swirl in her crystal glass. My hands calm, my heart pounding under my skin. David kept glancing at me, sensing something but too polite, or too trained, to interrupt. Emily's voice echoed in my head from our last call. "Are you sure you want to do this like a power move?" And yes, God, yes, I was sure. Margaret had played the game of humiliation for years. She needed to feel the shift when the power slipped out of her hands. As dessert plates were cleared, Margaret clapped her hands lightly, smiling around the table. "Family," she said sweetly, "is the greatest gift, isn't it?" My stomach clenched, but I smiled faintly. I picked up the special bottle from my purse, uncorking it with careful fingers. "I brought something," I said softly, meeting Margaret's eyes. She tilted her head, amused. "Oh? What's the occasion, Anna?" My smile widened slightly. A little announcement. Something unexpected. I poured the wine into her, glass slowly, deliberately, watching her eyes sparkle with curiosity. And I thought, this is it. This is the moment everything changes. The table quieted as I raised my own glass, heart pounding but face calm. That was the moment everything changed. Margaret's perfectly manicured fingers wrapped around her wine glass, her lips curving in that tight, amused smile she always wore when she thought she was winning. David looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly. "Anna?" he murmured, confused. I smiled softly at him, placing a hand on his arm. "It's good news, love. Don't worry." I turned back to Margaret, feeling the sharp, delicious tension thrum through my veins. "Margaret," I said softly, "I just wanted to thank you for all your guidance these past few years." Her eyes glittered, head tilting. "Well, dear, it's just family looking out for family. I raised my glass higher, feeling the heat rise in my chest. You've always been so concerned about whether I could carry on the family line. I saw her pupils tighten, a flicker of confusion dart across her expression. David sat up straighter, realization dawning in his eyes. Anna, are you saying... I smiled, a slow, deliberate, victorious smile. We're pregnant. Margaret's hand jerked slightly, her wine glass tilting just enough to spill a thin red line across the white tablecloth. The room went silent. I heard Emily's words echo in my mind. Make her drink to your triumph. I watched Margaret's face go pale, then flush red, her mouth opening slightly. No witty comment, no quick jab, just raw, stunned silence. And I lifted my glass calmly to my lips, tasting the sweetness of revenge. The table erupted. David shot to his feet, his face breaking into a wide, stunned grin. Anna, are you serious? He gasped, pulling me into his arms, laughter and joy flooding his voice. I just smiled, because they had no idea. Margaret stayed seated, her glass trembling slightly, her carefully constructed mask slipping, cracking at the edges. Her eyes darted between us, wide and uncomprehending, her mouth opening, closing, searching for something sharp to say. But for once, nothing came. I felt David's arms wrap around me, felt his happiness surge, but my eyes were on her. On the woman who had called me barren, who had layered every family dinner with tiny poisons, who had made sure I always knew where she thought I fell short. Margaret's fingers tightened on the base of her wine glass. Well, she finally managed, voice thin. That's surprising. I tilted my head slightly, heart steady, voice soft and sweet. Surprising? Oh, Margaret, it's a miracle. I watched her swallow hard, watched the raw exposure flicker across her face, watched the shift in power as the one thing she had used to control me crumbled into nothing. David kissed my forehead again, laughing softly, his joy blinding him too, the undercurrent swirling just below the surface. But I felt it. The power shift, the reclamation, the delicious crackle of quiet, perfect revenge. And as Margaret lifted her glass with a shaking hand, murmuring a brittle, "Congratulations," I smiled faintly, knowing she tasted every drop of that toast as a bitter loss. Later that night, I sat curled up on the couch, David's head resting softly in my lap, his hand splayed over my belly, as if he could already feel the tiny life growing there. My heart pulsed with something fierce, something I hadn't felt in years, peace. I poured her a glass, and poured myself freedom. The house was quiet now, the dishes cleared, the laughter faded, the sharp tension of the dinner melted away. But in my mind, I could still see Margaret's face. The stunned blink, the tremble of her fingers, the way she raised that glass and swallowed her pride like a bitter pill. For years I had let her chip away at me. Her passive-aggressive jabs, her gaslighting, her whispers about legacy and family worth. I had let it shape the way I saw myself, as less, as lacking, as a woman perpetually failing to measure up. But tonight, something shifted. Not because I was pregnant, not because I'd finally proven myself, but because I had reclaimed the right to decide when and how my story unfolded. I had taken back the moment, the narrative, the power. Emily texted me a simple message. How did it feel? I smiled softly, typing back one word. Perfect. I ran my fingers gently through David's hair, feeling the rise and fall of his breath, the steady warmth of his body beside mine. For the first time, I realized I didn't need Margaret's approval. I didn't need her acceptance. I had everything I needed, right here, in this quiet, growing life, and in the woman I had finally, fully become. And when Margaret raised that glass tonight, she didn't just toast a pregnancy. She toasted the end of her control.